What's going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa, and I am your humble host, as always, Niko House. Today, we have a very special guest returning back to the show, and I absolutely would consider him a friend of the MCSC network. Today, we have Lee Stranahan, who is one of the co-hosts of Fault Lines on Sputnik Radio. How you doing, Lee?
Hey, doing great, Niko. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me on. I mean, y'all have me on all the time. Y'all keep joking about the fact that I'm going to be too popular one day to get on, but I can't pass up a chance to go on and argue with you. So
yeah,
you'll never even though we've been agreeing a lot more lately, man.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because you've decided that this go around, you're going to try a little bit something different. You're going to shake things up a bit, and you've decided to basically endorse Tulsi Gabbard really early on in the race, even though you were an avid Trump supporter. So if you could first talk about what you do on Fault Lines, because I think that's really important, especially when we're discussing discourse between the left and the right, and then kind of why you voted for Trump and what made you decide to make that switch to Tulsi.
Well, I voted for Obama in 2008. But 2012, I didn't. I voted for Romney in 2012, semi-grudgingly, but I was unhappy with stuff with Obama. Trump versus Hillary was real clear to me, in the same way that Obama versus McCain was real clear to me. I still don't regret voting for Obama over McCain, I'm a Republican and I'm on the right broadly, but I'm a populist mainly. And if you've got to define left, if you got to use left and right, if you've got to use that axis, I put myself on the right because, generally speaking, I'm skeptical of government power. I worry about government power more. And
I don't think that will put you too far off from the modern left, I guess the evolved left now, because I feel like it's getting back to that point where a lot of the left is realizing, okay, our government is getting way out of control.
Well, no, it is, and that's why on a lot of issues, that's why you get, and right now I think you see it with the pro-Assange people, the people who are out there supporting Assange. You see them on the left and the right. On foreign policy, you definitely see it, where you see Rand Paul fans. You know, if Rand Paul were running right now, I'd support Rand Paul as a Republican, probably on most issues over Tulsi. But Tulsi Gabbard, I will tell you, I have never seen a politician that I can remember, and if you can name one, I'll look.
I don't know. You got a little bit more gray in the beard than I do, so you might.
Yeah, no, I'm all good. No, but I can't think of one who's better on foreign policy than Tulsi Gabbard, and the reason she's so good on it is she's explicitly calling out the military-industrial complex. She's explicitly calling out countries like Saudi Arabia, who I've been talking about for years, and actually, when I was at Breitbart, tried to get a meeting with Trump. This is before Steve Bannon, who I worked for there, before he took over the campaign and kind of left the family. And then the next time we saw him, he was at dinner with his new kids, which is what happened. Everybody who's working at Breitbart, we didn't get any notice. I got a text message from a Washington Post reporter I know the night Bannon left. It's like, is it true Steve left? And I was like, wait, hang on, what? And I
got Magic Johnson.
I checked Slack and Steve was gone. And it was like, what just happened? But before Steve left, I was trying to set up a meeting with Trump to talk about Saudi Arabia, to say, look, Saudi Arabia is everything that people on the right are trying to make out about the Muslim Brotherhood. Is really Saudi Arabia. And by the way, the Muslim Brotherhood's got problems too. But the Saudis are.
I'm glad you actually said that, because I think a lot of people they've conflated all of this. Like Saudi Arabia represents the most perverted version of quote unquote Islam, the same way that Israel represents the most perverted version of Judaism. Like they twisted and contorted.
I'd actually kind of disagree with that, only because we've had a guy named Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro on the show, and he believes that Zionism is anti-Semitic, and he's right. I agree.
Well, no, I mean Israel.
Yeah,
I mean like like not so the government, not the people. Like you know how the people of Saudi Arabia, a lot of them aren't there necessarily by choice. You know, they're under a regime that they've kind of been indoctrinated in. So I would say it's kind of like the same situation.
It's similar. It's similar. Although, like you say, it's not, to me, it's not even close. But Saudi Arabia, 100% agree. And for her to go out there, and by the way, they spend a lot of money, and that's why everybody on the right, they're right now, Trump, they're going to designate the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. Leave that aside tactically. And again, the Ikhwan, the Muslim Brotherhood, is a problem I could point out they were working with. But the big problems, the Muslim World League, which is the biggest charity in Saudi Arabia, I've written about that for years. I was trying to have a meeting with Trump about it and trying to get that set up. So to see Tulsi Gabbard out there specifically using terms like neocon and neoliberal, boom, saying the military-industrial complex is the problem. She's not like, as a veteran, and as a veteran, and as a very attractive candidate. In other words, I don't just mean good-looking, although obviously she's a good-looking woman, but she's got so much. If you were doing a checkbox, veteran, military service, her whole demeanor, her entire demeanor strikes me as reasonable. She seems like a reasonable person. And so I've said to people, even on the issues that I don't agree with her on, she doesn't seem like somebody who would simply ignore the opposing position. She seems like somebody who would listen to a reasonably stated concern about certain things.
She does. Whenever a lot of Democrats, my first interaction with Tulsi was an hour-long phone conversation trying to explain to her how Hillary Clinton's campaign had infiltrated Bernie Sanders' campaign and was using its super PACs to basically put their splinter cells all throughout the country. And she sat there and listened for an hour. You know, I mean, I don't have to guess whether or not she internalized it, because she then obviously in the next year and a half introduced the Securing America's Elections Act the first time. Yeah. So like, this is a big deal to her. Yeah. And when I look at that, to me, so first off, it's not even close. There's nobody else, period, who it would be more qualified to be the commander-in-chief. If that's what you see as part of the role of presidency, to be the commander-in-chief, there's nobody else who's qualified. And it's not close. It's not a close call. And then on the issues that I don't agree with her on, in a lot of ways, I see what she's doing as more or less standard issue Democrat positions on most of the other domestic issues. But even the problem there is I don't have standard Republican positions on most of the rest of the issues. So on healthcare, for instance, I don't agree with Medicare for all and those things, because I have concerns. My concern is real simple. If you don't trust the government to run foreign policy, as a lot of people on the left would go, yeah, don't agree, don't trust the government, blah, blah, blah. Putting healthcare completely in their hands is worrisome to me. Now, that being said, the Republicans have no position, literally nothing. They've no coherent position. And they're just pretty much trudging along, saying whatever they get paid to say at that moment in time by the lobbyists. And they don't even, so at least if you're Sanders,
on Medicare for All, for instance, at least you have a definable position. You want this. What they talk about on the right is competition across state lines or let the market decide, and that's all bogus. What I don't hear, I'll give you an example, but I hear nobody talk about, and seems to me like if you brought it up with her, she'd go, okay. I think it's very concerning that health insurance companies are also healthcare providers. If your auto mechanic was your insurance company,
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly
Like Kaiser kind of a situation.
Kaiser and a zillion other examples where the hospitals literally are the insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
If your auto body shop was your insurance company, then every time your fender broke and it was $20,000, but you don't pay it. Don't worry, we got you covered. It's only going to be $500 for you, but they pocket the other money. That's problematic to me. That I never hear anybody talk about. It's the most obvious thing in the world. Why? How's that going on? Why does that make any sense whatsoever? And so that's the kind of thing I bring up, and I don't hear anybody.
Yeah, I think that actually that's a very valid point. I actually think that as far as insurance companies go, so for the most part, I think that everyone can agree that insurance has been assigned reasonably so to vehicles, homes, even renter's insurance. It's there. These things are non-essentials, right? Yeah, it's really, really nice to have a car, especially if you're living in like a very rural area. But it's not like an essential. It isn't essential to your life. Like you can live without a car, you know, or you can have one car instead of 3 cars, things like that. You don't need it but like your health is kind of something you need to be able to pursue life, liberty, and happiness, right? So, we have to have, so like we shouldn't be having private insurance. But I do agree there is a component that we need to address, which is the government has been pretty much utter failures in almost every aspect. The things that they do kind of right, they mess up because they allow lobbyists to get involved. And right. I think that that's going to solve a lot of problems for both the left and the right with whatever disagreements we have, because we can get down to legitimate policy discussion after we stop having to worry about our politicians being bought off from either side of the aisle.
Yeah, no, as somebody who likes the, I say it pretty often. I say that Trump didn't drain the swamp drained him. Mm-hmm. And it's true. And living in Washington, D.C. for 2 years now, as I've done, I didn't understand the swamp until I lived here. And the reason is because until you live here and you see the Lockheed Martin building with the beautiful front lawn and the Adirondack chairs, and then you go into the metro and you see the ads by Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman but literally at the Pentagon metro station, covered with ads, that's the swamp. And until you can get it, I can tell you about it. But until you live here and see how pervasive it is, I don't know how else to put it, but like it's obvious where the money's going in this town and where the bread gets buttered, and it's all with the military industrial complex. And the problem with Trump is that he, like a number of people who haven't served and who are on the right, they tend to fetishize the military and weaponry, and they like playing.
Very good way to put it.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
no, they like playing. I mean, they like playing commander in chief, right? There's nothing judicious about their application of the military. There's nothing strategic about it. I mean, strategic for the stockholders, but like, there's no way you're going to be able to convince me, for example, that going to Venezuela would benefit America. We're already the #1 exporter of oil around the world. So what the hell? Like, at this point, it is, the idea is that capitalism is supposed to bolster competition and allow people to compete, which obviously keeps prices down, et cetera, et cetera. But this isn't a competition. We're basically saying we're going to murder innocent people if you don't do what we want you to do, and we're going to blame you for it.
Yeah. And it's when you know history at all, just even if you just start with post World War II history, and post Soviet history, it's very, very obvious what's going on, and it's not what Trump supported. Although I can see the origins of the problem, which is people on the right broadly tend to, and it's not about. We had somebody call in and they were saying, "Well, you guys, you're too nice to the troops." That's not the troops at all.
Too nice to the troops.
It's not the troops. It's
and by the way, what did they say? Too nice to the troops. I don't understand what they mean.
They said, you guys talk about support the troops and everything, and I'm like, well, I do support. I don't know, like the troops aren't my issue. It's by the way, it's why I like the fact that Tulsi didn't get higher than major. I trust majors more than generals.
100%.
Right.
Same reason I would trust an E6 before an E7 or an E8. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a different Geneva classification once you get past a certain level, whether it be non-commissioned officer or an officer. There's a reason that, for example, Colin Powell had to become a full-fledged Republican when he was more of an independent, at most a libertarian, because there is a lot of politics once you get past a certain level. E6 for the enlisted, and it would be 04, which is where Tulsi Gabbard is at right now. So at major, after that, you're kissing ass.
Well, and the other thing I realized about this, the other thing is, I say, living here I live in Virginia, but same thing. I live, right down
DMV,
right from the Pentagon, and the area I live in, I tell people two things. I said, one thing is, here's my commute home. And this is absolutely true. So I go across the bridge, and on the right is the Pentagon. On the left is Boeing, about 10 seconds past that, and then Lockheed Martin, and then all these office buildings, which are think tanks.
That's fucking
government.
That's insane. I'm like, hold up. So the guys writing a check for the Pentagon, basically giving these defense contractors money, are right next door.
Are literally, you're right. You take the highway, the one.
Wow.
Boom. It's the Pentagon. It's Northrop. It's Boeing. It's Lockheed Martin. And then right about 30 seconds after that is the Porsche dealership. Now, that's important to understand. That's the way it goes. And it's a very nice Porsche dealership right at the corner of the one and Glebe Road. And everybody who's in town knows exactly where that is. You start to understand that the swamp is full of fabulous shopping and dining, because it is. Everyone does brunch on Sunday. It's fantastic. So what it is that if you're a general, picture this. You're a general. You're working at the Pentagon. You're not a working person working at the Pentagon. That's harder. But you're a general. And you got a wife. You've been married 20 years, blah, blah, blah. Now it's time to retire. You got a kid in high school. Let's just say that's a lot of people, right?
It's a lot of, basically the Pentagon, if you're in the military, is a lot of 05s and up. And they're doing paperwork, basically.
That's right. Now what happens is you're going to retire. Here's two options. Number one, you're going to retire on a military pension, which means your wife has friends in Alexandria and she's got, your kids are in school. That's all going to end because you can't afford to live here. So you're going to move to Florida. Your kid's not going to finish high school. Or the think tanks come along and they say, you know what? We would love to have you on our board. And we'll pay you more money than you were ever making there as a general. And your wife keeps her friends. Your kids stay in school.
And they keep the network. The kids keep the network for they can use it to advance in their lives.
And that Porsche dealership is right there. And you're not driving the Porsche to the Pentagon, which would be weird. You're just driving it around town. And then you're taking the weekends to go up to Delaware or whatever. Or you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like that human aspect. That's how corruption works. These are not evil. I mean, Bolton, Pompeo, yes, evil. But most people, they're not evil people. They're people who they put their 25 years in of service, right? And now they get a chance to make more money than they ever saw working, and that's how corruption works.
And can I say something, especially for people who, so for me personally, right? Obviously I'm a veteran. Well, not obviously.
Yeah.
Most people wouldn't assume that. So I am a veteran. Yeah. I was at Fort Bragg, which is rapid deployment. For those of you who don't know, in North Carolina, that's where Special Forces does a lot of their training. That's where Delta Force does a lot of their training. Like, we are like the creme de la creme of the military. And the reason, so what happens is there are a lot of people who, especially when it comes to Iraq or Kuwait, they would be quote unquote excited about deploying. A lot of people can perceive that as, well, they just want to go kill people. No, listen, people. Most of the people who are in the military didn't have any type of stability whatsoever. The most money they're ever going to make in their lives, depending on what they do after, because a lot of them don't want to be connected to the military at all after they get out. The most money they're ever going to make in their lives is when they deploy, with their money being tax-free while they're quote, single, unmarried. And a lot of them save that money. A lot of them buy houses, buy a car, whatever, things that they have never had before in their lives. And it needs to be understood that the poverty is being weaponized against United States citizens so that they will be okay with deploying, even as support. There's a minority, a very small minority of people who get excited about killing other people. Very, very small. They're crazy. They were crazy in high school. Most of them were bullied. They also end up becoming police officers after they get out the army. So like that's a small minority. But for the most part, a lot of people just want to be able to have health insurance, go to college without being $50,000 in debt, and have security for a family that may have not had security in generations before that. So like supporting the troops is more than just, you want to support the troops. Don't make them go to Venezuela. And when I say make them go, don't allow consent to be manufactured so that they now have to be forced to go because they're under contract, right? Yeah. And they're going to have to go, even if they don't do a good job, they're still going to have to go. Like, support the troops by keeping our military, our generals, and our leaders honest.
No, 100%. And to me, they don't. That's why you end up with a Bolton. You know what I mean? That's how you end up with a guy like that who doesn't have any. What's his background, right? And so being here in Washington just really brought it home for me. It's not. I'm not understanding why corruption exists. The corruption does not happen because people are offered evil stuff. It happens because people are trying to live a life. And I know people who worked for the three-letter agencies in town and stuff like that. They're not evil. They're
regular people.
And they have homes in Maryland. You know what I mean? And they want it, and they'd like to keep them. That's all.
And a lot of them, given the opportunity, if they had a chance to make things right, and it is presented to them, a lot of them will take it.
And I'll tell you, people don't know how much high tech there is in DC right now. There's a lot. And I see it because I have an office downtown at a WeWork, a shared, workspace place. And I've had a couple offices here. Boy, there's a lot of smart people, a lot of entrepreneurs and stuff like that. But if they were in Hollywood, they'd be developing technology that would be used in the film industry. Why? Because that's where the film industry is. But they're here, so if they're developing technology, it's going to be used most likely in the defense industry. So if you're working on, like, I'm doing stuff with, I'm a graphic artist and worked professionally in Hollywood as a graphic artist and visual effects artist for many, many years.
I never knew that about you.
Yeah, no, I worked at Access Hollywood when that happened. I was a graphic artist. I spent 5 years as a graphic artist in Access Hollywood. When that Trump tape happened, I was working there, and I didn't know about it, but I knew when I watched the tape, I'm like, I know that producer, but I'm doing development in Unreal Engine, which is a 3D, it's a game.
Yeah, I know Unreal. Yeah.
Right. And so,
wow, you were on Unreal's team?
No, but I'm doing not right now.
Oh,
I'm working on projects using Unreal. No, but I'm a 3D artist going back to the 90s.
got
And
you. Okay.
and so when I'm doing Unreal stuff, I live here, so I'm like, how could we use this and try to pitch this to the Smithsonian or whatever? And if I were so inclined, I'd go, how can we pitch this to the Pentagon? Can we use this as a training, a VR training? You can kind of see it in one of the, I got an Oculus, a couple of Oculus, a Rift and a Go back there. We're doing VR development. If I were so inclined, I'd go, okay, how can we use the Oculus Go to sell 1,000 units to the Pentagon, blah, 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 and make, you know what I'm saying? That's what you do here.
Yeah, especially if you're one-track minded, you have no idea what else the hell's going on in the world. You don't know exactly what they'd use it for. You're just like, I have a job I have to do so that people can feed their families.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line a lot of the times.
Yeah. But if those are the meetings you can get here, which they are, if you're like, well, I think we can get a meeting with if I was in LA, I'd go, well, I think we can get a meeting with Paramount Pictures and sell them this. Here, you can get a meeting with the DOD or whatever. That's who you get a meeting with.
So I have two questions for you. Well,
yeah.
One, so in my humble opinion, I think that one of the problems that we have had for a long time is that I feel like there is not enough reward for doing the right thing, right? It seems to be mostly that there is too much reward for doing the wrong thing. And then there's that one person who does the right thing, makes the right decisions, gets a lot of success from it, but then it just stops at that person because they don't really pay it forward. They're just too busy soaking in all the praise, in my humble opinion. So one, I would like to know, what do you think about that? Like, do you think that there's, at this point, the reason we see more bad than good a lot of the times is because there's just not enough reward at this point for doing good, right? At least not enough that outweighs the risk. And then two, I will, if you don't mind addressing, what was it like when you started seeing Trump stack the administration with the Boltons, Pompeos, Mattis, like what was going through your mind because I know like a lot of the reason you voted for him and the reason I said he was better at least than Hillary at the time was because we weren't going to have these people in, right? He's going to try to be a little bit more isolationist at the very least. And then he goes and hires all the people that Hillary was going to have on the administration anyway. So I would like to know your thoughts about both of those things.
Well, where I see the reward thing especially is in journalism. The fact is, as a journalist, and especially on the right, when I first moved out here, I sat down with a successful, well-known kind of on the backside publisher, right-wing publisher. Mm-hmm. And I was talking about, I was saying, when I was at Breitbart, I was trying to write about the Muslim World League. I was talking about it, but nobody, and he said, look, here's the way it works. He said, the right-wing media is published by about 6 pro-Israel funders on the East Coast and the West Coast. He said, not knocking it. He said, I take their money too. But all they want to hear about is the Muslim Brotherhood. They don't want to hear about the Muslim World League. They don't want to hear about Saudi Arabia.
Because Israel and Saudi Arabia work together.
That's right. And at the time, it was not as obvious as it is now. It was a little, you could find it out, but right now it's just obvious. But yeah, 2 years ago, it was like, well, really the center of Islamic fundamentalism, Saudi Arabia and Israel, that seems like a strange, well, no, it's true. And he said, you're never going to get stuff. He said, they're never going to do it. I'm seeing it right now. I'll tell you who it is. I've talked about it. And I said something about it at CPAC. This guy, Mike Cernovich, who a lot of people have heard about. I know who's paying him. I know what money he's getting. And he's all about the Muslim Brotherhood right now.
He loves talking about some damn Muslim Brotherhood. Boy, Mike can get it so right sometimes. And the other time, I'm like, Mike, what the fuck are you talking about?
Well, I know. So they showed a little film called Blood Money, like 20 minutes of it. And I'm sitting there at CPAC and I'm watching the film and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble because I just can't not. So I got up and I said, you mentioned the Muslim Brotherhood about 15 times. You didn't say anything about the Muslim World League. who did this, this, and this. And then his business manager pulled me aside afterwards. And now I know exactly what's going on there. And I know exactly what checks he's picking up. I get it. But I can't do that. And because I see it all over the place. The easiest thing in the world for me to do, would be to go, the Palestinian terrorists who attacked Israel yesterday and blah, 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 and do that whole line, right?
Like the Trump administration. What's that girl's name from the Trump administration? She actually quoted, she tried to say that a video from the Ukraine in 2015 was Hamas firing from the Gaza Strip, and it turned out to not be true.
Yeah.
But we know why. Like we know who the administration supports, and it's Netanyahu.
And I'm not don't take this the wrong way, but I'm not like super pro-Palestinian either. I don't have a dog in that hunt. I don't have any dog in that hunt. Which way? I'm trying to figure out what's going on. So I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm not whatever. Not that way.
But money isn't going to be the influence of your opinion in that regard.
Exactly right. And you see it all over journalism, and you see it everywhere in journalism. And not only that, by the way, it was the same when I was on the left, when I was an Obama supporter, I did work for Move On, and I did, I wrote for Huffington Post. I was over at Daily Cause till I got thrown off there for saying John Edwards had an affair. That's why I got thrown off Daily Cause.
But didn't he have an affair? Didn't that come out?
Yes. Maybe
that's why you're in trouble.
Why did I get thrown off? Because it turned out Elizabeth Edwards had written the foreword for the book that he had coming out. You can go find that book now. Go look the timing. They threw me off because I was like, I'm not saying this is the first story I worked on. I said, I'm a guy. I've cheated. I was married. I've been married twice. I said, I'm not criticizing per se that, but I didn't do it when I was running for president, and which is true. Yeah, and I didn't pretend that a baby of mine was my campaign workers and make him go live with, which is what Edwards did. And I said, so he need to go bake bread in a monastery for a year and then come back, John, we like a lot of your policies, blah, blah, blah. Boom. I got kicked off Daily Cause in like a week and a half because I was just like, it's obvious he's having an affair. Can we just admit it and move on? And boom, they took me down there. But I was, like I said, I did work for Move On and Brave New Films and all these people, and went to an Obama victory party that Adam McKay, who was Will Ferrell's producing directing partner, threw. Great. It was great. I was in LA, and it's a good place to be a Democrat. And but again, I still had the same convictions. I was against the Iraq War as a Democrat when that was cool to be against the Iraq War because it's Bush and we don't like him. Then I met Andrew Breitbart. When he died, I'm like, if that guy's a Republican, then I guess I'm a Republican. And then, but as a Republican, still didn't like Bush. You'll notice you notice the Bushes don't show up at the conventions the way the Clintons do.
Yeah.
The Bushes, they
don't show up anywhere the way the Clintons do.
People don't, Republicans, especially grassroots Republicans, don't have like love for them.
Which is why Jeb was flailing in the damn primaries, because they aren't as popular as people like to have people think.
They aren't, and they don't run things, but their ideology, that neocon ideology that they are kind of tools of in a way, that has its base, and that's the way it is. And so when I saw that, I was just like, I'm not down with this. But no one ever made me be pro-Iraq war. No one ever said. Andrew Breitbart, when I first met him, first conversation we had, he said, there's more room to move on the right. He said, the left, he said, the problem is they really keep you in your lane. And I said, there's no way I said, I can see it a little bit, but now I can see it. He's completely right. You can see it with you know what it's like. and the left.
See, I feel like he was making a distinction between the neoliberal world. And there are elements of the left that are just, I mean, as ridiculous as some of the elements on the right. Like there for every Joanne Reed, there's a Ben Shapiro. Right. So, but there is an element of truth as far as the neoliberals are concerned. If you step out of line, they will crush you.
Yeah.
Your entire career, even.
Yes. Yeah. No,
they're loyal to names more than the Republican Party is definitely better at, I feel like, coalescing around ideas, even if they're paid ideas. Whereas because of the dynamics of the people of the Democratic Party, it's like a little bit more diverse. There is a lot of ambition because they're coming from families that haven't been traditionally successful. Things like that. They become attached to names. And when that happens, all hell breaks loose.
Well, and the thing I noticed, and I know it was very, very clear in some of the stuff I was reporting. I'll just give a perfect example is the Congressional Black Caucus. Let's take Congressional Black Caucus, which is largely people representing, not always, but there's a good chunk of it that represents rural southern districts. Okay. Sanford Bishop and those guys who represent rural, Southwest Georgia, right? If you go to Southwest Georgia and you talk to people who are country, I don't care whether you're white or black, you're more likely to be pro-life than you are pro-Trump.
No, that's true. That's
right?
true. Yeah.
Yet, how many people in the CBC are pro-life? And the answer is like zero.
At least out in the open, yeah.
Like officially. Now, I don't think that's like not normal in the sense that if your constituency, because they're more rural than urban, which I don't care, again, I don't care if you're white or black, if you're more rural than urban, you're more likely to be pro-life and pro-gun, for instance, just pro-gun in just a general sense. Like you got a rifle, you got a shotgun or something like that. And or you hunt and you fish, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Which, by the way, most black people are actually pro-gun rights, from my understanding.
Yeah, no, yeah. But where's the representation on that? And the answer is there isn't any, because they're said, okay, look, if you're going to be a Democrat, this is your check off these boxes. And I see more diversity. A guy like Rand Paul is allowed to function. He's not a complete pariah. You know what I'm saying? He's and he takes a position that's more diverse.
Bernie, it was Rand Paul and Bernie were in the same position until very recently. Yeah. Like, until that election. And then because Rand Paul, even though he spoke out, I mean, he could only do so much. Like, I will say this. I will 100% admit, as somebody on the left and as a progressive, if Rand Paul won that election legitimately in 2016, they would have let him win.
Yeah.
And it would have been the end of it, and they would have rallied behind him. And obviously that was not the case with Bernie because of, there's a whole slew of reasons behind that, but it wasn't the case.
And they couldn't stop Trump. They couldn't stop Trump, so they co-opted him.
Yeah.
That's what they did. They figured out how to co-opt him. They were like, we can't stop this. So
yeah. Which is what they're trying to do to Bernie. But they're late. They're late to the party. Like, you should have tried to co-opt Bernie maybe in 2016. It probably would have been easier.
Yeah. But to me, they have co-opted him. When you look at Bernie,
they co-opted him in some ways. Yeah.
What I think they do is they'll like, okay, you care about healthcare. Okay, we'll let you have that. We don't care about that. Because, by the way, we're going to co-opt your position on that too. See, that was the thing. When I was an Obama supporter, because I opposed the individual mandate, which Hillary supported, and Obama did not.
He did not. Yep.
He was very articulate on his arguments about that, about like what I mean by articulate. He stated those positions. He said, well, forcing people to buy health insurance is like trying to solve homelessness by forcing people to buy houses.
Yeah.
That was a great argument. That's a great argument, succinctly put.
Yeah.
And I was
Obama's dumbass got played. He got played. Like, he was saying stuff. It's like it's what I think sometimes happens to Trump, right? because I feel like they're both megalomaniacs, but Obama was a smooth operator as far as megalomaniacs are concerned. So they would be placated by their staff, and then they would just take the word. Yeah, man, they're going to be able to keep their doctors. Like, are you sure the lobbyists aren't putting something else in that bill? No, man, it's good. Trust us, it's good. And then because what's easier if you're the president? Are you going to tell everybody, y'all, I fucked up and didn't read the bill. This isn't even the bill I wanted. Or are you going to stand behind it full-throated and say, we're trying, at least we tried.
Well, if you listen to the show, we, me included, there's plenty to criticize Obama for, but I don't criticize him all that much in the sense of I saw what happened. I watched it. I was writing at Huffington Post. When he gave up the public option, for instance, that's to me was like, okay, I'm off right at that point.
Because you knew there was something up.
No, I knew as soon as Rahm was in the White House, as soon as Rahm was put in, I was writing at Huffington Post, and I said, there's trouble afoot right now because I did not vote for Obama to get Rahm Emanuel back in the White House.
I know that dude. Hey, look, he's bad. Even he would be a bad Republican even by conservative measures.
Yeah, he's a Clinton operative, and
100%.
What Hillary did as Secretary of State in the first term was set up everything that was used, including Ukraine, which we talk about all the time. She set up everything that was then used to try to throw the election in her favor. The Ukrainian collusion and interference in the election, which we've talked about on my show for 2 years now. And some Republicans are just coming around. See, I'll tell you, the biggest danger to Trump right now is Fox News. The biggest danger to Trump right now is Fox News. And people on the left don't know it because they don't watch Fox News.
Well, I realize it because I watch Fox News, unfortunately, because,
But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's the same way people on the right don't watch MSNBC. So they think, well, Niko, you're a big Rachel Maddow supporter.
Yeah, I get that. I get that sometimes from people who just kind of engage with me generally. They're like, you think that way because you're a Democrat. And I'm like, no, I don't. Yeah. I'm not a Democrat. I only got registered as a Democrat like 4 weeks ago, only to vote for Tulsi just so I can turn it back to independent.
I'd be out covering like Black Lives Matter protest or left protests that involve that. And I'd be there covering the protest, or they'd be like standing there. And I'd see Republicans walk up, like they'd be outside a Republican event, let's say. And Republicans would be like, why do you guys love Hillary? And I'm like, guys,
because a lot of them don't.
No, they don't. I just would be like, these guys are socialists. I would say because they were. If I'm calling someone a socialist, I mean they call themselves.
It's because they identify as one.
Right. Brian Becker and Sean from By Any Means Necessary are socialists. Why? Because they're part of the Party for Socialism and Justice, or whatever the name of the party is. That's why I say that.
You don't lob it as an insult or an attack. Exactly. I get what you mean.
No. And Obama's not a socialist.
Yeah, I hate when people call him a communist and a socialist. I'm like, whatever socialism is, really, Obama is not that.
But see, and what people would say with Obama is, I said, some people on the left will say he's a corporatist, and some people on the right would go, he's a communist. And I'm like, he's kind of a little of both, because he is a guy who knows he was raised in a very left family. He's read Frantz Fanon. He's, you know what I'm saying? Like, do you think Biden's read a lot of Fanon? I don't think so. And
that's one of y'all. He's one of y'all's, man. Biden's a Republican.
Well, no, he's
neoconservative, I should say.
He's a neoconservative, but he's very much in the Democrat or
inner circle.
He's an establishment guy. But and by the way, he's responsible for a lot of this Ukraine stuff too. But I'm like, no, that's not true. I'm like, Obama is a corporate.
By the way, can I plug your show? If you have not listened to their show on Sputnik Radio, you can follow Lee on Twitter. His name is his handle is JustStranahan.
Yeah.
And the stuff that I know about Ukraine, the reason I was able to, come onto this show and talk about the fact, like, this whole idea that somehow all of a sudden, like the argument had become that Russia was trying to help Ukraine or the vice versa. I can't remember which one it was. I was like, no, they don't like each other. And Ukraine before recently was ours. Like that establishment was that regime was our puppet regime. So the lie that they were trying to push, like Russia's trying to move on Ukraine, the innocent victim, and then it was Russia was trying to work with Ukraine. And now it's this new guy is going to be a puppet of Putin. Right. So like, but Lee knows his stuff when it comes to Ukraine. So definitely follow their show. Follow Lee on Twitter, and they always tweet out the episodes there every weekday.
Yeah, 7 to 10 a.m. But it's throughout the day. You can watch it because they're back there. But yeah, that's what we love having you on. I loved, Garland and I, we love doing the show because I got to tell you, working for Russia the past 2 years has been awesome.
Hold on now there, Ed Schultz. Okay.
Well, but it's true. They just the reason I liked working for Breitbart when Andrew was alive, much different situation.
Was there a drop off? Like, was there a huge change from when Andrew Breitbart was alive versus when he died?
For me personally, there were and for the site, 1,000%.
They got kind of crazy after a while.
Andrew was in favor of independent journalism. And right before he died, like 2 or 3 days before he died, he had a big, what he called a come to Jesus meeting with the people at the company. And he said, I'm not interested in doing the 12th exclusive interview with Mitt Romney today. He said, that's what the mainstream media does. Not interested. I want to do original reporting. Andrew he said publicly many times, I was the best professional experience he'd ever had. I'll tell you why he hired me. He had this story, the Pigford Black Farmers scandal, that he wanted to cover. He hired me because I was on the left. He hired me because I was a Democrat. He said, this story is too big. I want someone to check my work and to provide a balance to challenge me, to go, no, you're wrong here. And then
that's interesting. And
then he funded me for 3 months. I drove around the country and I interviewed Mike Espy, former ag secretary, and black farmers around the South and lawyers and blah, blah, blah. And we got to the bottom of that story, but he explicitly hired me. How many people in journalism would go, you know what? I want to get somebody who's on the opposite side, who's a good reporter, so we get this story right.
There's about 10 of us. There's about 10 of us, maybe.
And very few people have access to media the way Andrew did. Andrew could get on Fox, let's say, and talk about a story. And so it was when he died, it changed my career. So that's why I left to cover Syria. I went to Lebanon in 2013. Bannon didn't want me to go, so I quit. I was just like, okay. And then when I quit, we suffered. My family. I mean, I don't want to whine about it, but we got.
I know what you mean, man. A lot. It's the. There's a real existential, moment. I feel like a lot of us had to come to, and a lot of sacrifice that a lot of us had to make. And I know exactly what you mean, man.
I had my sixth kid right after Andrew died, and we got after I left, we got 3 months behind in rent. I don't know if you've ever been 3 months behind in rent.
Yep.
Yeah. That is, I mean, God,
that's scary.
Landlord. If we're living in like a corporate run apartment or house or whatever, we weren't. The guy was a homeowner who was renting to us. 3 months behind in rent. That is crazy. And my car repoed and all that kind of stuff. But I got the story right. I was 100% right in the story. So whatever. But that wouldn't have happened if Andrew had been around.
Do you feel like, I mean, you got the story right, and obviously a lot of stories after that. And do you feel like it's kind of all paid off now?
No.
You said no?
No, it's definitely not paid off now. I mean,
just like finding Sputnik and having the show where Garland and kind of being in a trajectory where you feel like your independence is actually valued versus something like when Andrew was alive versus someone trying to steer you in one direction or the other.
It is. The other thing I like about it is my boss, India, will, if I'm working on something about the Ukraine stuff or whatever, he's a journalist. So I can go into his office and hash out stuff and go, okay, give me some pushback here. What do you think on this or whatever? And like when the stuff first came out, I was trying to figure out Yanukovych. And so I asked my boss, I said, so is Yanukovych corrupt? Now, Yanukovych, don't forget, is the supposedly I was trying to figure out the Manafort thing.
Mm-hmm.
And was Paul Manafort, pro-Russian? And India, my boss, said, and you can look it up, it's true. He said he wasn't pro-Russian. He said, in fact, the Russians were pissed that he was hired because they felt like, we have consultants. Why are you paying this American $1 million? And I said, so is Yanukovych corrupt? And he didn't go, no, most glorious leader Putin says that's not who my boss is. He said, yeah, he's corrupt. He said, but the problem is they're all corrupt.
And exactly.
He's right. And he said, so he ended up going with Russia, but they said the Russians didn't like the fact that Yanukovych didn't speak Ukrainian and wouldn't learn it. And they were like, what are you doing? You're not going to be able to be a leader if you don't speak the language, if you speak more Russian than Ukrainian. And so it was that kind of thing. So I love the fact that I've got a boss who, if I'm trying to figure out stuff, I can talk to. After Andrew died, Bannon has no attention span, and you can't say, hey, Steve, I'd like to sit down for a half hour and hash out a story with you. It's just like, and he's off. And so I started doing the radio show a lot at Breitbart as a guest so I could have meetings with Steve. That was my way of meeting with Steve Bannon. The only way I could explain stories to him was to get up early in the morning and do the radio show. That was it. So it completely changed for me. And Breitbart just sucks now. They're afraid.
A lot of their stories are just copy and pasted Fox News stories
because they don't want to do original reporting. And it's exactly the opposite of what Andrew told them. People, when someone dies, they go, well, what would Andrew's
legacy corrupted like that?
It's horrible. And I could see it when I was there too. And so as long as they let me do my work, let me do what I do, great. But I had to quit twice and was fired once.
Wow.
All after Andrew died.
I don't mean to have a sudden subject change, but so I want to touch briefly on this Venezuela conflict.
Yeah.
Me and you seem to be almost in 100% agreement. I have no idea. I've never met Maduro at all. I have no idea what kind of man he is. I just know the facts available to me. And it seems to me that whenever some 35-year-old guy who literally had no name recognition whatsoever until 6 months ago decides one day, you know what? I'm the president now. There might be a few problems with the whole narrative. So can you kind of walk us through what you think about the Venezuelan conflict and what is your take on this clear attempt to manufacture consent on what looks like to me is another oil-based invasion and regime change war?
Well, what's interesting to me about it, the most interesting thing to me about it is how quickly these things fall apart in real time now. If you compare it to Iraq, and if you compare even Iraq to, let me go back to the Kennedy assassination. Between the time Kennedy was assassinated and people figured out that the story that they were being fed was not, in fact, accurate, that was like a 10-year period. It was the 70s until they had the House Select Committee on Assassinations. Now, and that's the president being assassinated. It took a long time. With Iraq, a lot of people were skeptical at the time, including me, but it took, before the story demolished, it was a couple of years before it's like, okay, they weren't weapons of mass destruction. With Venezuela, with a lot of stuff in Syria, it's happening in real time. The Skripal story, a lot of these stories now are like Oh, no, we don't buy it like right now. We don't buy it this second. We just had Alex Jones on our show, and it was a very good interview for people who are used to Alex.
Yeah, that was a very interesting interview. I must admit.
Wasn't it?
It was very enlightening.
Because whatever people think of Alex or whatever the perception they have of him, he's anti-neocon. He's anti-war. And by the way, I think he gets sucked into some stuff on the right. I think he's too pro-Israel. But okay.
And actually, he admitted during the interview that sometimes he gets sucked in and he kind of, I guess, leaves his roots at times. He admitted it, even if only a little bit, and he did it on the Joe Rogan interview as well.
Yes. I was trying to, that Joe Rogan interview I thought was, and by the way, Rogan coming out for Tulsi, awesome. I think Rogan's one of the most interesting people out there.
Yeah.
In the media right now, because he seems independent to me.
Very, very much so a pillar of evolution.
Yes. And so I look at Venezuela and I look at like the narrative about the truck being set on fire. That collapsed in, I think, a week.
Yeah. If that long.
Completely collapsed.
I want to say Jimmy did a video 2 days later. It was done.
Yes. And it's all, the thing I tell people is it's all this. It's all that 10 years ago, now 11 years ago, the biggest single change in the history of human technology ever happened with the advent of the cell phone. So now, what is this? It's a TV truck that I can broadcast live from the White House and have on. I can research it. If you and I are at lunch and you think the lyrics to Baby Got Back by Sir Mix-a-Lot are one thing, and I think they're another thing, we can just go, it used to be, we would never resolve that.
You have to wait till you get home to your desktop computer, go to lyrics.com, print them off, fax them off.
well, young man, I'm old enough to remember when that didn't happen. When you just like, someone would be like, hey, that Creedence Clearwater song, There's a Bathroom on the Right? And you'd be like, I don't think that's the name of the song. And be like, well, we'll never figure it out. You just never figure it out. You'd have to go to the library or something. You'd never figure it out.
That's funny.
And now, if you're like, well, wait, that truck didn't really catch, the rebels didn't set it, Maduro didn't set it on fire. Look it up. We just bip, hey, let me airdrop something to you, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Boom. That changed everything. And the problem is you've got thousands of years of human civilization where we didn't have access to that information. So now you get can I swear?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I don't give a shit.
Okay. I'm on the radio normally. So now you get bullshit like QAnon or bullshit like the Resistance, where people are they're able to get the access to WikiLeaks, let's say. But they're like, oh, and I look at WikiLeaks and I go, well, this shows the clear corruption of the DNC and how they screwed Bernie Sanders. And other people go, oh, no, they're talking about pizza. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
People's ability to reason, people's ability to think has not caught up with their ability to Google shit.
Yeah.
And so
I think it is catching up, but it has not caught up yet because the technology just moves so quickly.
There's a lag. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lag. And so
it's funny to me that you bring that up, because I was just talking about NQTel the other day. Actually, I brought it up on a radio show too, because a lot of like Twitter and Facebook, for example, those CIA companies, right? And eventually what people don't understand when it comes to corruption, when it comes to politics and the elites, a lot of the time their own self-interest ultimately end up becoming their demise.
Yeah.
Right. They wanted this thing we're going to be able to manipulate the people with this thing. And then they didn't know that people would start using Facebook Live to cover stories. They're like, we thought you were going to, record yourself skiing or some shit. Not, start a radio show.
No, and so that's, to me, I look at Venezuela and I go, the narrative fell apart quickly. And so what you see is the people who've always had access to rich and powerful people have always had access to information and communications technology, whether they were buying radio stations in the 30s, right? Or owning newspapers in the 19th century or whatever, right? That's all falling apart. And I saw it when I worked at NBC. when I worked at NBC, YouTube had just started. That's how I got started, because of YouTube and Huffington Post. I was working at NBC. I did comedy. That's what I did first. And this new thing, YouTube, I'm like, well, let me try this. And to see just in 10, 11 years, how much stuff has changed. The problem right now, and the fact, I'll tell you the other thing that's great about the show. I love working with Garland. The fact that I'm sitting there, I've said this, much to both of our chagrin. I said on the show one day, I said, Garland, you realize that if we just took the number of hours that we talk to somebody, you and I are best friends. And he said, oh my God, you're right. Because you think I talk to my wife for 3 hours a day?
Yeah.
No, I see her, but you know what I'm saying? We don't, I gotta talk to Garland.
And then look, and then when you get home, you got to spend hours researching so you can go talk to him again the next day.
That's right. And he does the same thing. And so he and I don't hang out really outside the show, and good, because
they're all day.
We see each other. We're talking about politics for 3 hours a day. And so when we first started to do the show, neocon was not a term I used. And Garland was using that term. And Garland didn't know much about the Ukrainian stuff or whatever. I can name stuff. And so even on stuff like healthcare, the other cool thing about the job is they don't make us they don't say, well, Lee, you and Garland need to take the position that Israel's right. And Garland, you need to take the position that Israel's right, but that Trump's wrong.
So they don't Meghan McCain you is what you're saying.
Yeah, no, they don't care. And neither one of us are hostile towards Russia. But I'll tell you this. Remember when a few months ago, Putin was at a conference and Mohammed bin Salman was there and he high-fived him?
Yeah.
I didn't like that because I'm not a big fan. But I said it on the radio. No one fired me. And Garland and I are much less pro-Saudi than Putin is. And by the way, much less pro-Israel than Putin. What's Putin's relationship like with Netanyahu? It's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I don't get criticized for saying that. And I never bought into the Russia thing ever, which is why I went to work for Russia. I didn't go to, I would not have gone to work for Al Jazeera, let's say, just because.
You step out of line with them. It's no different than stepping out of line with MSNBC or CNN.
No, right, yeah. And by the way, I think Al Jazeera does some good work, but they had a thing on the APAC that they pulled and blah, 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 whatever. So, but I'm not knocking Al Jazeera. I'm just saying that I had no problem working for Russia because I never bought into the Russian narrative ever. I ghost wrote a piece for Roger Stone. It's kind of my fault Roger Stone got involved in this because I ghost wrote a piece for him saying this is not Russia. And technically, I wrote it at Breitbart. And so they've been great to work for. And sitting down for 3 hours a day with somebody that you are on theoretically the other side of, he's a Sanders supporter. I'm a Trump. By the way, what's interesting is he's not a Sanders supporter now, and I'm not a Trump supporter now. We didn't switch. We just got okay, Bernie got co-opted, Trump got co-opted, and we both like Tulsi now. And guess what? I'll say, you can tell Tulsi this, and I bet she knows it. If she gets co-opted, I won't support her, and neither will you.
Nah, she knows. Yeah, she knows.
You know what I'm saying? I know she knows.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell. She's intelligent. She knows the people who support her are in favor of principles and ideas. They're not in favor of whatever. It's not about her.
It's about, value system, obviously, 100, and consistency, right? Like I talk about it all the time. I cannot ever think of a time other than Tim Canova, right? Other than Tim Canova,
yeah, where
the person, I can guess what they're going to say about any given political situation 100% of the time.
Yeah.
I've never had that.
Canova's he's been on our show too. Canova's another example of what I would say is a very attractive candidate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good, look at his resume, look at who he is, and then he's a good speaker. He's not gross to look at like a lot of. By the way, none of these things. You can be a politician and be ugly, right? But if you get a politician who's not ugly, that's the only standard.
That's the only standard.
It's a bonus, right?
It's true.
And so that's what I mean. It's like I look at Canova and I go, that guy should be a rock star in the Democratic
and
Party.
If he would have played ball, 5 or 6 years ago, he would be. I mean, look at what Tulsi was, a rock star in the Democratic Party. She was, until she pushed back.
If you look at Beto, dude's not that good looking. Beto, like people talk about, Beto O'Rourke, he's great looking. No, he's great looking for a politician. Beto O'Rourke is as good looking as the average, small market weatherman. Like he does the morning news in Omaha. Like he's that level of good looking, right? But he's not like good, Hollywood level of good looking. Yeah. None of them are. And that's why I say, but that when you get a candidate, and I've worked with candidates in the Republican.
He wasn't Kennedy. Put it like that.
No. And even Kennedy wasn't Kennedy. Kennedy's guy, if you look at him, a little goofy looking. You know what I mean? He's not Cary Grant or whatever. And so I got a really low bar there. But when I see someone like Tulsi and I just go, veteran, woman, minority,
she's Polynesian,
right? I just go, okay, she's got all those check boxes and attractive, great speaker, blah, 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 takes all these positions. But there's one thing, she's anti-war, period. And it's so disgusting to me.
And no money in politics. You want no corporate money.
That's right. Yeah. Well, because that's right. But
you cannot be anti-war if you're taking corporate money. Like at the end of the day, period.
Yes.
No matter what.
Well, now let me ask you this, Niko. I said I would ask this because someone said this. She made a pledge not to take PAC money. And then she's taking PAC money.
No, she's not. Not this election cycle. She hasn't.
She hasn't? Okay.
No, she has the most progressive fundraising strategies out of everybody. Bernie takes PAC money, but apparently it's from unions like that, like nurses unions and stuff like that he was already working with openly anyway. But not like super PAC money. But even Tulsi isn't even taking money from unions, because even unions can be, you know how unions can get. Once you get to a certain level, it's political.
No, absolutely. Yeah. No, yes. Yeah, I totally know.
So, no, she doesn't take PAC money. Who said that?
I know where the funding came from.
Well, I had someone tell me the other day, mind you, I just got done talking to her finance guy, and they were telling me, Tulsi is taking hundreds of thousands of dollars from the RSS and Hindu extremists. I was like, oh, I need to see these numbers. And they were like, what do you mean? Like, no, you got to let me know what numbers they are. Because at the time, they hadn't even hit 65,000 donations, bro. They were broke, basically, is the moral of the story. And if you're telling me Tulsi has a couple $100,000 laying somewhere from just this one group, me and her need to have a conversation right now. So I need to see the numbers. Because I'm like, she's in the building. I'm waiting. I'm like about to go talk to her. Let me see the numbers. He was like, oh, well, I don't really have the numbers on me right now. So if you could give me some, like, no, you don't have the numbers is what you're saying. And because he organized this entire protest to talk about all this money that Tulsi took and how she's a Hindu extremist and all this other stuff. And she's not any of those things. And usually if you ask common sense questions, because everybody wants to get, really mad and they want to argue back and forth. I'm like, okay, can I see?
Right. Yeah. No, and that's why this guy, somebody follows me on Twitter was like, oh, she said she'd take PAC money. But by the way, to me, in a sense, I actually don't care. I care what your positions are. So if someone wants to give you money, as long as it doesn't affect your position, I don't care about that in a sense. But someone wanted me to bring it up. And it's the same thing when you were on the show. People have been like, well, she's a member of Council on Foreign Relations. And so that's what we would love, again, for reasons.
Yeah, we can talk in more detail about it in another episode. But yeah, she is, but she's actually on the last, year and a half of her term. She's only on a 5-year term because at the time she was the next up. Right. Yes. She even explained to us there in my interview with her, the process, which is super secretive, but she really didn't care. She was explaining exactly how she got on. She was like, to be honest with you, most of them don't like me. But she also said, to be honest with you, there are a couple of people like her in CFR that are went through the same evolution, and what they try to do is work together to obviously get all the intel they can and then push back. That's how she's so confident in a lot of the stances that she takes, because she sees what's really happening, who's really pulling the strings, what they're really trying to achieve, and that's how she can somehow be so far ahead on every issue before everyone else is.
Her temperament, when her statement on the Notre Dame fire, for instance, boom, that's exactly what I want to see from a president. She didn't duck away. A lot of people were like, even Obama was like, was saying it's important to people worldwide. Just say it's Catholic. That's what it is. Say that's what it is. She said that's what it is. She said she didn't shy away from saying.
She's big on identifiers. She's big on that.
But she also made it more universal, right? It's not just about Catholics, because it's not. It's about people who blah, blah, blah. And Sri Lanka, she doesn't shy away from mentioning that, but she doesn't shy away from mentioning Christchurch either. And she doesn't shy away from mentioning the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting.
And she didn't shy away from mentioning the mosque either. So that's who she is, yeah.
I see a lot of people, a lot, particularly Democrats, who they don't want to say anything that could be perceived as like pro-Christian or
pro-Christianity, or
they don't
like
even
there's something inherently wrong with being Christian.
No, right, and that I'm a Christian, but more importantly, I don't like that in general. It's the same way. After the Christchurch shooting, if I got up and I said, well, violence against anybody is wrong or whatever, you'd be like, okay, but it was targeting Muslims. That's who was targeting. Say it was targeting Muslims. Then we can move on. Politicians don't, on the left and right, they don't want to do that. So it's to me, her temperament. I'm not at all surprised. She knows that the people supporting her, it's about the ideas. And that if she sells out those ideas, then people go, well, I got burned by Obama, I got burned by Trump, I got burned by Tulsi. Maybe whoever, in 2024, if it's Rand Paul or whoever, maybe they won't burn me. But people are getting sick of this shit. I don't know.
Yeah. That's why I think it's so important, just for me. So me as a progressive, right? Obviously, I've endorsed Tulsi. And it's precisely because of her ideas and also her understanding of how these problems that we have happen. Like, why do they happen? And for people, in my opinion, to say, like, there are so many people, bro, on my comment section, for example, she's perfect on this. She'll be a great VP one day. Like, what? Why is that a necessary qualifier? One, and how many times do you have to say she's perfect on something before you recognize, okay, maybe I'm pitching the wrong candidate at this point? Because it's all about, in my opinion, everybody's like, well, Bernie, she doesn't have a chance of winning. Why? Well, because of X. Usually it's to the degree of DNC will let her win. And I said the other day, well, if the DNC is going to let Bernie win, then I don't want Bernie to win. If that's how you feel. And I'm not saying they would, because I don't think they want to let Bernie win. That's, obviously. But for people who feel like they would let him win, I don't want that Bernie. I want the Bernie they wouldn't have let win. And at the end of the day, if they both are going to be prevented from achieving success within the Democratic Party, then why not let democracy prevail? Why are we not rewarding being on the right side of every single issue? That's one of the reasons why people won't join the right side of every single issue. Like we were talking about earlier, there's not a lot of reward, compared to getting smeared nonstop. And then after being smeared for being on the right side of every issue, you say, well, she should be VP. What the hell?
Well, no, and to me, it's not. I said the other day, and I meant it actually, that if there's like a Republicans for Bernie group, I'm in. And if there's not one, I'll help them get it organized. I'm not, because I work for Russia and I used to take pictures of naked people. I'm not. I might not be the best spokesman for that. But on the other hand, I don't care about any of that. Like, I just said it. I don't care. I work for Russia. I used to take pictures of naked people. I work for Breitbart, and still argue with me on the ideas. If you got a problem with that, great. I don't care. Although I'm a very good photographer, but I am. I was an award-winning photographer. I did stuff that was in galleries. But okay, whatever. Not everybody's cup of tea. But I don't care about that. And you know what? I notice a lot of people don't actually care about that. I notice the sane people go, I'm not endorsing everything you've ever done in your life. Does that make sense?
No, I don't think that. It does. What makes 100% sense, because if Bernie wins, right? People for some reason, because they are personally and emotionally invested in Bernie, because I endorsed Tulsi, they took it so personal. I was like, yeah, no, I just think that's the best candidate. But if Bernie wins, doesn't mean I'm endorsing every decision he made. Does that mean I'm indirectly endorsing Hillary's 2016 campaign? No. Yeah. It's what he says he represents and what he has shown consistently. I do actually support, even though I don't support some of his actions in a vacuum. And that's okay, because we're humans. You're never going to get 100% of any. Okay, unless you're Tulsi, unless we have Tulsi Gabbard, we're never going to all agree with 100% on anything. But she again, to me, a lot of her, if I take outside of foreign policy, a lot of her positions right now are what I would call standard Democrat positions. I'm not even knocking it. I'm just saying. Actually, I think the only one that would be standard Democratic position would be Medicare for all. But like, she stopped Arming Terrorism Act. I don't feel like that's a standard Democrat position. Like election reform, like 100% election reform.
Climate change, to me,
climate change.
Abortion. She's sort of more old school Democrat, which is she's not personally in favor of abortion, but she's pro-choice on the law.
Which I'm fine with that, but I do feel like most of her positions would be perceived as lock and step Democrat positions. But like, for somebody who's been critiquing the Democrats regularly over the last 4 or 5 years, they're not, which is weird. Which, you know what I'm saying? Like, you would figure her OFF Act, for example, the Off Fossil Fuels Act, which is like the most aggressive climate change and environmental legislation, like it makes the Green New Deal look like some scribble that a child did, to hang on the refrigerator. And it isn't the things that people critique about it for the Green New Deal. That's not in the OFF Act. The OFF Act is very cut and dry. Let's get it done. Let's put people to work. She's not for a jobs guarantee, which I'm sure that you wouldn't probably be for. Like, and I'm not necessarily for or against it, but I'm like, shit, I don't need a jobs guarantee if the OFF Act includes programs to train people for these jobs that they should be applying for and competing for. Not, you know what I'm saying? Which I'm more for competing fairly for a job. Because if you have a jobs guarantee, then a promotion it becomes a little bit of an issue and things like that, I've been in that world. So, and then it becomes playing politics once again, instead of a competition.
And when I say people like, I'm not knocking AOC, but I'm being.
Yeah, by the way, people, Lee actually prefers AOC to most of the neocons. So that's another thing that.
But I got to tell you, the reason the media, including Fox, is pushing her, notice her position on Venezuela, which is, I'm going to go along with the Caucus. That's not a.
No, it's a punk position.
That is right. That's a good.
Ilhan got it right, though. Ilhan got it right. Pence tried to tear into her on Fox News the other day, because isn't it weird? He said she knows nothing about U.S. imperialist policies. What could she possibly know about?
No, it's horrible. And AOC, even that, to me, I just look at it, I'm like, that is weak. That is just weak.
And the point of having 3 million followers if you're not going to leverage them when the time comes.
That's right. On a big issue that's important. But to me, that's why they push her. The reason they push her is because she's divisive enough to get people fighting. I think that I've had this theory, which is we like to go for the opposite. So at the end of the Clinton administration, we wanted a president, America as a whole, wanted someone who wouldn't get a blowjob in the White House. And we felt pretty sure that was George W. Bush. And we were right.
Pretty sure.
But at the end of the Bush thing, it's like, okay, we want someone who's not dopey. And who's the opposite of Bush? Well, Trump. Obama. Then at the end of Obama, people were like, okay, he's smart, but he's kind of too smart for his own good. and too much, and who's the opposite of that? Okay, well, Trump. Now, the opposite of this divisive thing that Trump came in on, but Obama helped ratchet up. Tulsi's the opposite. She's the least divisive. She seems to me like somebody, if I said, like on a position like, look, my concern is corruption or whatever. If I said, take a position like, what can we do? My concern is, I get it, you're pro-choice or whatever. What are you going to do to help reduce abortions by making the reason women have abortions, which could be poverty, it could be a whole bunch of things.
Yeah. Poverty and opportunity is a huge component on, lack of contraception use, early pregnancies and abortion. So a lot of that could be dealt with a legitimate opportunity and job increases.
And I think that she seems to me like somebody, everything I've seen, when I watch her statements, I'm like, that's what I want to see from a president. She doesn't demonize. When people on the right say baby killer, I'm not interested in that. Again, I'm pro-life, but I'm not interested in that. And I'm not interested in hearing, oh, misogynist, you hate women if you're pro-life. Nope, not true.
Yeah.
And may be true for some people, not true for me or most people I know who are pro-life. And I just go, boy, she seems like the opposite of divisive. But I don't think, by the way, I don't think she's going to win. I don't.
Which is why they paint her as the most divisive, is because she's a complete and total opposite of that.
Yeah, yeah. And I just look at her statements and I go, there it is. So,
I have to, the point that you brought up actually kind of gave me more hope, because I was part of Bernie's campaign in 2015, right? Where we didn't at the time have a blueprint of how to get Bernie to where he was by the end of 2016. And where I'm seeing Tulsi at right now is that they're out in front smearing her early, very similar to how the Republican Party was out in front smearing Trump early, because they were worried that he would have some type of outsider effect, and he was willing to go on record and say things that were taboo to say, critiquing the Republicans, like really critiquing them for being neocons. I mean, he ended up capitulating, but saying things like NAFTA's bad, because remember, Republicans and the Democrats were lockstep with the disastrous trade deals. You're not allowed to say NAFTA's bad. But he was saying TPP was bad. And so they came out early because no, we got to shut this down quick. But there's when it comes to politics, there's almost no such thing as bad publicity. And because when you attack someone long enough, people are going to do their research. And then you eventually make them a victim. You feel bad.
See, I think the Rogan endorsement to me is very important, because I'll tell you, this is the thing. I always thought Trump would win because I never bought into the polling numbers, because I realized that a lot of people were not, the mainstream media lives on this surface up here, and the grassroots live down here.
100% agree.
All you had to do was look at the size of Trump's rallies. Now, right now, you can see it with his Joe Rogan interview with Alex Jones. Suddenly that's trending. Joe Rogan is one of the most powerful journalists, I think, in the country right now.
100%. 100. They're
not acknowledged.
Like PragerU and those people, that's why they loved going on in his show at one point. But he ended up exposing a lot of those guys, like Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens, and he exposes them because he just lets them shoot themselves in the foot. But we don't really get a chance to see Candace Owens and the real neocons exposed unless Joe Rogan, unless they yearn to go on Joe Rogan because they thought they had something to gain. So 100% agree.
And I feel, and look, I feel, the thing is about Charlie or Candace, even, who I've never met and don't know, they don't understand. I think I've seen this happen with, by the way, a lot of black conservatives, where they start to get the sense of, like, I'm being played a little. Like, like not completely. It's not the way people on the left think it is, but they start to go, you know what? If I want to have this position, I'm going to have it. And the thing I liked about being a conservative at first was, I've seen this with friends of mine who are black conservatives. I've seen it. They're like, I like the freedom I've got to a point. But if they start to question Israel, for instance, then, okay, sit down. And by the way, that's not racism, because they do it to white folks too. It's just, you can't, there's no diversity from the Republicans on Israel. But the grassroots don't feel that way. And it's not that they're anti-Semitic at all. It's that they don't want to, wait a minute, I'm fine with being friends with Israel. I'm fine with being allies with Israel, but I'm not fine with giving them anything that they want at all, ever, which is what Trump has done. Anything you want. And I definitely don't feel that way about Saudi Arabia. That's
well,
what
I think that's once again, that just goes back to what, I mean, we had a whole show about that, right? Populism. Like, we can differ. You and I will differ on Medicare for all. We differ a little bit on abortion issues, not even that much. But most of those things we can hammer out through discussion when we cut through the fat and the bullshit that prevent us from having those discussions. Because when you understand that the reason that, you know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, you and I would have gotten hung up on a Medicare for all debate, and that's going to end our, you know, any conversation or discourse that we have in the future, because that's exactly what they wanted it to do, right? They wanted abortion, Medicare for all, Israel even, like, to divide America so much that they would never coalesce on the issues that really matter. And now we're breaking through that.
And I do think that what you might see is, because again, I don't see how she can make it through the Democrat gauntlet. I just don't. I don't see someone have to explain to me like how
I can actually explain that to you if you want.
But if it doesn't, but you can also see how that's very difficult, right?
Of course. Oh yeah.
And so to me, what might happen is 2020 might be the tee up for 2024, where 2020 is the thing that gives her the name recognition. And then whoever wins in 2020, let's say Biden. The Biden to me is the likely Democrat nominee. If I was laying money, what's that?
Probably won't, because he can't fundraise enough for the party. So they won't. Like, there's a war right now going on within the Democratic Party between the old guard and the new wave, and the identitarians.
Yes, I always give it to the old guard.
Usually, but the old guard can't fundraise like they used to.
Yeah.
Bernie has more money now. He's 15 million. Bro, he has more money than the entire Democratic Party in every single one of their fundraising legs. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, and they thought Joe Biden would, you know, okay, maybe he can do something. But once again, because his establishment, he's spending more money in all the wrong places. So it's like he's not raising enough for the quote unquote party itself. So basically, it's going to come down to who can keep the party afloat and make sure we have jobs after this.
Yeah.
They didn't have that after 2016.
And I also don't think, I think that I think the Democrats, the party, knows that it's always tough to run against an incumbent president. You're
always
just whoever it is, you're probably going to lose, right? It's like if you got a 16 in blackjack and the dealer's showing a queen, you're probably going to lose. But you can win it, but you're probably going to lose. So they know they're probably going to lose. So in a sense, it's a throwaway for them. But I think Tulsi, if she, I know she's saying, well, they might not have the threshold for the debates. That's fundraising. She's in the debates, right?
She's in the debates now. Yeah, she's locked into the first two for now.
But that's not going to matter in a sense to me, because the debates are going to be, okay, everybody say your sentence.
And well, so here's where I would dispute that. If you say, because the same thing happened with Bernie in the first debate, right? He didn't get as much time to speak as Hillary, of course. Chafee actually got, not Chafee, who's the other guy? I think he's a veteran. He's older, but they actually were getting more time to speak than Bernie. And obviously Hillary was getting the most time. Not O'Malley. O'Malley got a lot of time to speak too, but in the second debate, O'Malley got shut down. It's another guy, Chafee, and oh my goodness, I cannot remember his name. But basically, because of how crowded it was, 6 or 7 people, Bernie made sure he used his opening time effectively, right? Yeah. Touched foreign policy, domestic issues, and even touched a little bit of race and socioeconomic issues as well. And then closing statement effectively, and he made sure that he used his time to focus on his policies more than rebutting the others' policies or rebutting their ideas. He focused on what he brought to the table and didn't get sucked into the quote unquote debate aspect, right? Because that just becomes a pissing contest. And then that night, he became the most Googled person, or he was the most Googled subject on Google, like period, around the world. So like from that moment on, it was history, right? We know that. So that's where I believe Tulsi, the polls won't reflect it, but I don't really judge shit off of polls for obvious reasons. Where I judge things is like, I know Bernie's the clear front runner out of everybody and anybody because he has 1 million volunteers, which is that is absurd. That's never happened. Right. 1 million volunteers in a month is absurd. And having 1 million individual donors in 2-3 months is absurd. And you know, that's how I know he's a front runner. And Joe Biden isn't even close. Yeah. So we'll start seeing things like that because Tulsi has that crossover appeal. Now, the path to victory is also a little bit more unique this time than last time. There's some variables that change. Now, there are 35-ish, maybe like 2 or 3 more or less, open or semi-open primary states where they don't have necessarily another option on the Republican side, and a lot of states that don't, or a lot of races where the people don't really like Trump because they feel he betrayed them. A lot of them don't like Bernie either because he bent over to Hillary in their mind. Right. Yeah. And so they like a fighter, and Tulsi's really the only one who presents herself as a fighter, especially obviously the more they hear about her and learn about her. And when they start seeing, you know, because when they hear about Tulsi has like 100% conversion rate. You meet her one time, it's over for you. And like, that's it. You can't help it. I saw friends who were on the couch. They just knew they were voting for Bernie. They went to a Tulsi rally the next week, and they were sitting on the couch scratching their head because they were like, damn it, I thought I was going to be working for Bernie this time. I really did. Because she has that effect on people. So I think that it obviously, does that mean they're going to let her win? Does that mean she has a guaranteed chance to win? No. But the fact that there is no Republican option, right, other than Trump, works to Tulsi's favor, not Bernie's. Because when you have all of Bernie's domestic platform, plus you're dealing with election rigging and election integrity, plus you're way better on foreign policy, plus, you know, you're not that, you know, you're pretty easy on the eyes. And when it comes to getting donations from males, that's a big deal. Okay, let's be honest. And when you're getting endorsements from the grassroots every step of the way, getting endorsements from former Trump supporters and Republicans like yourself, that it takes one key endorsement, one key speech, one key moment to change everything. And they're not, the Democratic establishment isn't as united as they were last time because they're fighting for jobs and to pay their bills. Whereas last time they were fighting for Hillary because they knew that she was a guaranteed way to pay their bills.
Well, I also think that if it's Trump versus Sanders, let's say it's Trump versus Sanders, the debate is going to be about socialism.
Yeah, they'll call. Yeah, definitely.
That's what it's going to be about. If it's Trump versus Tulsi, the debate's going to be about the military-industrial complex.
100%. And if you don't mind me saying, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I feel like this needs to be said because people always say, "Well, who is Trump the most scared of?" And Biden's like trying to claim that it's Biden. He doesn't care. Listen, people, and you can dispute this if you don't think it's true. Trump is the true definition of whatever stereotype of a bully you think he is. In other words, he will attack people he knows or at least he thinks he can beat. He will not attack someone who is a guaranteed loss, especially if that person can expose them in any substantive way. Hillary. Tulsi was in the Oval Office. Tulsi has spoken to Trump. Yes. Tulsi knows everything about his decisions when he decided to pull CIA out, which was a lot of that was due to Tulsi. And when he decided to launch those missiles at Syria without proof of chemical weapons attacks. And that was because Tulsi was no longer allowed back in the room. It was the neoconservatives telling him to do that. Like, she knows who Trump really is, what his weaknesses really are. And Trump knows that, which is why heard the tweet from Tulsi calling Trump a bitch is the most popular Trump insult like that's been retweeted on Twitter till this day, and he still won't address her. She tags him almost once a day, still won't address her.
No, he can't. He can't. When I saw Bannon and when Trump's first trip was to Saudi Arabia and they're doing the sword dance and they have the orb and everything.
Yeah, that weird shit.
I was just like, ugh. I was just like, that's not good. And the fact is, right now, he can't. But I'll tell you the other thing is, I've seen Tulsi say a lot of stuff where she seems almost she gets Trump. She seems almost sympathetic to him in terms of she sees that he was pulled into these positions against what
I would agree with that.
Yeah. No, yeah, me too. And a lot of Trump supporters too. I think that what I don't see her do is do the standard insult.
She doesn't
racist, an idiot. He's blah blah blah.
Yeah, she doesn't play that game. And it's interesting, and I don't know if it's like a psychological operation thing, because I think it's just the type of person she is.
Yeah,
she's like, I know what you work. I talked to you. I was there when you pulled out Syria. I mean, excuse me, CIA out of Syria. Yeah, but I also know that you're not. Unfortunately, the powers that be have co-opted you. And we need somebody who's going to stand up to him. And for whatever reason, you can't. So it's time to move over. And it's if they're like I always say, and obviously it's untrue. But I mean, I've been involved in politics for a while now, especially at the organizing side. And I'm sure you've been in politics as far as the covering side. If your biggest critique of Tulsi that you think is going to dissuade the American people from voting for her, or dissuade Republicans from voting for her, or liberal leading one way or another, like if your biggest critique is, oh, the Hindu nationalists support her, you're going for a long couple of years, because that shit doesn't mean anything to 99% of the American people. And that's just a fact. But that's how desperate they've become, because she's the biggest threat. Even Fox News, they won't even attack her. Yeah,
she's very different because she's a veteran, but also, like I say, a lot of it is demeanor. She's not setting her the contrast in demeanor. I talk about, I mean, the optics of what makes an attractive candidate. Hillary Clinton, let's talk about her for a second. Hillary Clinton,
we have to.
Her voice is irritating. Her laugh, I'm not even trying to be mean about it.
It's inauthentic. It's irritating as hell. Yeah,
that's right. And the contrast between Tulsi's calming nature and Trump's bellicoseness, which Hillary tried to match. Hillary tried, and by the way,
and Bernie tries to match at times too.
And Bernie is an awkward person to watch sometimes. Sometimes when he speaks, the way it's his age, it's his.
Before he became super popular, the biggest critique of Bernie was his presentation. That was the biggest critique of him before he got popular.
And Bernie also doesn't. Dave Weigel, who's a reporter over at the Washington Post, I think it was Dave, who said to me a couple of years ago, he said, "I get Trump." He said he reminds me of my my grandfather arguing about politics at the diner. And
that's what my grandmother said.
And when I hear Bernie and Trump, if that's the debate, it's going to seem like two New Yorkers at the diner,
Oh my God, it's so true.
Think about it. So what are you talking about with the socialism thing again? Here you are with the socialism thing. You're the guy who you don't like socialism because you blah, blah, blah. And that's what it is. It's two old guys from New York arguing at the diner.
That is literally what it would be. And that is 100% true. I never even thought about that before.
No, it's true. It's true. And Tulsi, it would be, and Elizabeth Warren would be irritating. She'd be trying to outstrident all this.
Yeah, because she's inauthentic too. She has no idea how to go on the offensive.
They want to seem, I got to be more strident than you. Tulsi, just kind of goes, okay, let's talk about what you just said. That kind of
meditation, man. I need to learn her ways. I need to learn it. I saw her. There was a point for the first time ever. Tulsi, I saw it in her eye. She almost lost her temper. She was this close.
Yeah.
And it was at the LA rally when the literally paid protesters. There was a question that was set up where they tried to basically attack her for being Hindu, is what the question was.
Yeah.
And I can tell, and that was the point that made me actually start doing some more research on Hindu phobia. Because this is something that she had. It's like you don't react like that emotionally if it was true.
Right.
And she quickly collected herself and brought it back to the people. I was like, how the fuck did she do this?
I think I said it to you. I think when you're on the show, I genuinely feel like she's a better person than I am. That's how I feel about Tulsi. I genuinely feel, and by the way, like Bill Clinton, forget policies. He's not a better person than me. Trump,
never thought that.
Not a better person than me. And again, I'm not even trying to demonize these guys on that. I'm no saint. Right? Mm-hmm. But I'm no saint, but I've got a line. You know what I'm saying? Tulsi, because of her service, because of the way she is, she genuinely seems like a good person.
There are a lot of people who say that they're like, man, we don't deserve her. We don't deserve her. This country, this world, they don't deserve, because people like this, before she's done, like, let's be honest, unfortunately, she is going to be drained.
Yeah.
Because she's an empath, right? I think she's going to have every bit of her drained. She probably will be jaded. Even if she wins, right? Even if she wins, she will probably be jaded by the end of all this.
And I'm doing the same thing. I'm trying to, because I said it the other night, it just pisses me off when I see some people go like, because again, I'm pro-life, which means life, like not ending a nuclear war would be good too. But I see people, and I tried to modify my stance because it is sincere. I'm a Christian, but I'm kind of lousy at it sometimes. And but I said, look, if you sincerely, if pro-life, if that's your number one issue, I understand. But you got to realize that you're being used. And somebody said, well, abortions are like 800,000 or whatever in 2017. And I said, and the Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. I'm like, I understand. You're sincerely pro-life. You believe it.
I'm so glad you said that.
The Republicans establishment, I'm not saying individual politicians. Do you know who was consistent on this? People don't like her on the left. Michelle Bachmann. Michelle Bachmann, whatever you think of her, had 15 foster kids in addition to kids of her own that she took.
See, that's somebody who is principled.
That's principled. And that Andrew Breitbart, first time I ever talked to him, I'm like, who do you like? He's like, Michelle Bachmann. I'm like, oh, she's crazy. He's like, did you know she has 15 foster kids in addition to 5 kids of her own? I said, no, I didn't know that. And nobody I knew on the left, people kind of know it now. Nobody knew that. And he's like, why do you think that is? And I said, because it makes her seem like not a hypocrite. And so individual people like Michelle Bachmann, who's, like I say, she's got, forget policy for a second. Just that thing, she gets to me, she's walking the talk, right?
Kind of how people feel like about Elizabeth Warren when it comes to Wall Street policy, for example.
That's right. And to me, like, okay, but even Elizabeth Warren, you go, okay, but she takes the big money.
I know. I wish that people would get this shit, but for whatever reason, they don't care about that all of a sudden.
Yeah, right.
But she says pretty things now.
That's right. So to me, like, there are people who are 100% sincere. Pro-life, that's the biggest issue for them. I get it. I'm not going to try to argue them out of it. And I'm going to say, if that's your issue, then you're probably never going to support Tulsi. But I'm friends with like George Galloway in England, Labour Party MP.
Cool guy. That's a cool guy. I like that.
He'd love that guy. And
hey, tell him to come on my show. I've been trying to get him on my show. I DM'd him the other day.
I can't get him on my show.
Oh man,
and
I guess he's busy.
We love each other. When I saw him at Belmarsh when I was out there covering the Assange thing, I spoke, and I. By the way, here's a hint, Niko: never follow George Galloway on a stage because he's a pretty good speaker. I don't know if you've heard that.
Oh, but no, I have not.
I spoke right before him. And I did my thing. Hey, everybody, I'm an American. Blah, blah, blah. And then George Galloway comes up and he goes, the great Julian Assange It's just like, dude, what? And he's better. I'm not even doing the residents, behind these walls, behind these. It's like he's doing Shakespeare. But
hey,
yeah, Galloway's pro-life and anti-death penalty, which to me is the only logically consistent position to have, which is why I'm
so true. That is so true. And it's crazy. You don't ever hear people bring that up, and it's interesting that you did, because I wasn't expecting that. But it's because it's one of the main critiques that I've had. I feel like I said, you know how my position is. I would prefer to not have an abortion, right? Yeah. I mean, but I am like not in the camp of telling women what to do. However, you can't then say you're pro-life and be pro-death, especially when you know our justice system is fucked up.
Yeah. And by the way, and I got to point out that most Democratic dudes, not especially politicians, this is the ugly secret people don't want to talk about. When you get guys like Clinton or Weiner or Edwards or whatever, they use pro-choice as a way to get laid and then to get rid of the problems if they knock up somebody. And that's real. Now, so I'm not down with that either. Like that hypocrisy.
Because God forbid they say they're pro-life and then it comes out that they got an abortion. That's a whole scandal.
I'm so pro woman in the sense that when I just view it as like it, but I'm married, right? If my wife, when my wife came, said, I want to have more kids, I was like, great. But if when she said, I don't want to have any more kids, I'm like, great. I don't have any, that's up to you. We're married. So if you want to have more kids, we'll have more kids. If you don't want to have more kids, we won't have more kids, because it's up to you. It's not up to me. And that's really the way.
That's a real leftist take on that, Lee.
I don't kind of, but no. But here's the thing:
common sense 2020, man. It's not a left or a right thing. It's common sense 2020.
If you took men out of it entirely, most women, I think, like Planned Parenthood said, 20% of abortions are because most women want to keep it because a man pressured them some way.
Yeah.
So I don't like people who are like. Now, who are like, now I'm pro-choice, and I can't have you having a baby right now. It's like, shut up.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And even if they don't directly pressure them, the woman asks them their opinion, and then they give some half-ass like, well, what about you and the things that you want to do for yourself?
And we agree, right? We agree. And I just don't like. To me, that's a game that they play on the left, the Democrats. And like I say, specifically when you're talking about people like Edwards and Weiner and all of them, I know that they do use it.
So I will say this: I'll say the Democrat. I hate calling the Democrats leftists because they're really not.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
But yeah, I agree. The Democrats do play that game. They don't care. It's just like the CBC, the Congressional Black Caucus pisses me off to no end. Regularly, especially when they all 100%, except for Barbara Lee at the time, backed Hillary Clinton. And I'm like, hold the fuck. I said, hold up. Are these pictures fake or something? What did I miss? Because I was still kind of waking up to how things really worked in the Democratic Party. And when the whole Black Caucus said, we just really appreciate Hillary's history on the civil rights, and John Lewis came out. I remember seeing Hillary during the civil rights, and I'm like, yeah, I remember seeing her too, holding the fucking Barry Goldwater sign. What the hell?
Right.
I was like, this is the game. This is the game they play.
Yeah. And so to me, I'm trying to change my approach with people on the Tulsi thing to be more Tulsi-like, in a sense, just going like, if that's your position, I'm not even going to try to talk you out of it. Does that make sense? We
can all stand and learn a lot from Tulsi. The approach is amazing.
Yeah, and I think I haven't heard her say it, but I think her position should be, if you're sincerely pro-life, if that's your position, I might not be the candidate for you.
Which would be interesting to hear her say that. And if she does, I think she'll win people over.
Yes, she will, because it's like it shows respect. The thing I get about her on this is she does seem to respect. I have respect. If someone says they're pro-life, I respect that. Does that make sense?
I agree.
If someone says they're pro-choice, I respect that, unless they're a dude trying to say it to get laid, and because they know that there's condoms at the Planned Parenthood parties at the DNC, which there are. You know that, and that's
it's true.
it is true. It is true.
It's true.
And so, like, to me, that's a position. It's hip to say that. But oh yeah, I'm pro women. Okay, well, if you're pro women, then really, I don't think if you're Bill Clinton, you're in a great position to talk about how pro women you are. But on the other hand, I think people can't accept that. So that is the number one thing I'm seeing on the right is people going, I'm pro-life. And I go, if that's your issue, I'm not going to argue with you. Although I'll point out that Trump has not had a consistent pro-life position. By the way, I actually believe that at this point in his life, he's probably pro-life.
It's really easy to be that at 70 years old, huh?
I think so too. And with a wife who you're probably not, and you can afford kids and everything else, it is easier. But I also think a lot of times when people have kids and then they have to go, okay, well, which of my kids would I have aborted? That you can't do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree.
100%. That's very tricky for people to do. So a lot of times as people get older and they go, and I'll tell you one thing Andrew Breitbart told me, it really it changed my mind on this a little bit. He said, I was born in 1969. He said, I'm adopted because he was adopted. He never knew his parents. He said, my feeling is 5 years later, I might not be here. And his best friend was adopted as well. Now, that's a conversation that I've noticed that is interesting because that's a different. So that was his perspective. It's not ideological for him. It's like, I would be here.
Yeah. And I think that's it's interesting because, knowing adopted people and not like the people I know that are adopted actually belong to liberal families. Right.
Yes.
And once again, it goes down, in my opinion, to the root of the issues that you and I talk about and 90% of the time agree on, which is like, the abortion debate, quote unquote, becomes very much so less problematic and less necessary if people have opportunity. Because there are a lot of women out there who do not want to ruin their bodies and would happily and gladly adopt a child instead.
Yes.
But a lot of people don't have the means.
And if they don't, people have to realize nobody in the Democrat or Republican parties, and when I say nobody, I mean the establishment, the people who run things. Nobody wants to end the debate. Nobody. It's 100%. A cash cow for both sides.
For every issue, for every one of those issues.
It is a huge, and particularly on
like immigration.
Immigration, same thing. Well, but there's less actual debate on the immigration thing. There's only like one really anti-open borders think tank in town. But on abortion, the reason you had an uptick in abortions is everybody wants it to, they need it. They need it to exist because then they can say to people, oh no, you can't support Tulsi or whoever because she's pro-choice. Okay, fine, whatever, say that. But I'm not fooled by it. I know what's going on. And you know what? When I made that argument on Twitter, I had a couple people go, you're exactly right.
Because when you look where their abortions are happening.
And these are pro-life Republicans who are like, imagine how you'd feel. It's kind of the way Democrats felt about healthcare for a long time, which is you guys are talking a lot, but nothing's changing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of Republicans who are pro-life have been told, oh, it's going to change, it's going to change, it's going to change.
Once we get control, guys, put us in office.
And it's not changing. It's not changing. And it's not going to change. And because they have no interest in changing. If you want to actually reduce the number of abortions, forget any, not through not changing a law, but just simply through adoption, less people getting.
It has nothing to do with the abortions, having access or not having access to them. It's everything else surrounding it.
It's everything else around it.
Like it was like immigration for another, like I said, immigration. When we're talking about the deficit, well, we should cut, like Joe Biden actually sides with Paul Ryan. We should cut Social Security and cut Medicare. And like, it doesn't matter which way you feel about that. How is cutting Social Security and cutting Medicare going to solve the multi-trillion-dollar deficit that was brought on by war?
Right. or the immigrant. You know, we talk about Venezuela.
How are you going to solve the immigration problem? You hate immigration, supposedly, you know, on the neoconservative right, but then you're pushing policies that you know will result in mass undocumented immigration.
You're creating caravans. That's what you're doing. You're literally creating the caravans. And again, by the way, I think the other thing is my friend Brandon Darby is over at Breitbart and covers immigration stuff for them, but he does border stuff and he's exposed drug cartels. He's doing really brave journalism over at Breitbart.
Man, those border journalists, the real ones, right?
Yes.
Not the TP USA ones, the ones who are telling the actual story, getting the perspective from both sides. That's a dangerous job.
And Brandon,
find some stuff out.
Brandon's always argued. He said Trump made the mistake of not arguing for the humanitarian case, that the situation at the border is dangerous to women and children and everything else. It seems to me like Tulsi Gabbard, somebody like that, if she talked to Brandon, because Brandon, again, used to be on the left, but he's just doing good journalism over there.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who exposed the kids in cages in the Obama administration. That was
really,
yes, because he works with Mexican journalists who can't get published there because they're afraid of being killed by the cartels, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's always argued it's a humanitarian issue primarily.
Well, that would require Trump to actually be pushing it because he cared about the humanitarian aspect. He cares about it because it's a way to get him a couple of points in the polls, which is it's sad, but it's true because there's a huge humanitarian aspect of it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's what it is. It seems to me like Tulsi Gabbard is somebody who would go, because I'm seeing pushback against the open borders thing too.
We don't believe in open borders. I don't know who the hell said right. That the left believes.
Galloway came out and said that the other day too. He's like, open borders is crazy.
Like nobody with common sense believes in that.
Yeah, but that's been a popular position with increasingly the establishment Democrats have feigned like that.
Pretend like they want that, yeah.
And you know what? To me, it's always been, if you want to fix the problems in Mexico, great. Because I, again, lived in Southern California, knew a lot of first or second generation Mexican Americans, second generation, whose parents came over, illegally. And they're like, I'd like to live in Mexico.
As I'm telling people, who wants to leave my culture, generations of my family, the language that I know, my network that I had or used to have? Like nobody. Do you want to leave America? I don't want to leave America because sometimes you have to consider it, but there's really nowhere else safe to go anymore. But like there are a lot of people who are like, I just want to go to the Netherlands. I don't want to go to the Netherlands.
Right.
I like Miami. I want to not have to worry about my water being dirty and nobody being held accountable like what we're seeing across the nation right now. I wouldn't have to worry about stuff like that. I don't want to have to leave. But
they would just say, or they'd say, my cousins live down in a part of Mexico by the beach. They said it's beautiful. They said I can't live there because it's corruption. It's blah blah blah. The amount of corruption. So to me, one of the problems on the immigration issue is nobody's talking about what can we do to end some of that corruption? And by the way,
Tulsi
that's supported by the CIA and the military-industrial complex.
Tulsi's talking about it just
because they control the drug trade in a lot of cases. There's a reason we've had a heroin epidemic, and we've been in Afghanistan for 18 years. There's a reason. Yeah. It's not an accident. So
100%.
Yeah.
A lot. I mean, Tulsi talks about that all the time, where she's like, okay, you want to do a mass immigration. So, because everybody's like, well, Tulsi's not good on domestic issues, which is the biggest lie. Yeah. I don't say it's a lie. It's a misconception, right? Maybe people, because she's so good on foreign policy, they automatically assume it's like with Bernie, right? He's so good on domestic because he never focuses on foreign. Yeah. Tulsi focuses so much on foreign because she understands how it affects all the domestic policies she wants to pass, right? And there's obviously the humanity aspect of it as well. She talks about it regularly where, okay, you want to deal with immigration. Let's talk about the primary problem, the military-industrial complex. Why the hell is Elliott Abrams having any say in anything we're doing right now? Guess what? I hate to break it to GOP and Fox News, but you don't have Ilhan Omar if the CIA wasn't in Somalia. If you don't like her, blame your party.
And you wouldn't have what a lot of people on the right like to talk about, the Muslim invasion of Europe? Well, Syria.
Yeah.
The Syrian war, and by the way, the Arab Spring in general, not the legitimate part. Tunisia, to me, was grassroots. That was grassroots. Almost everything after Tunisia was pushed by Hillary Clinton and the Obama administration through, by the way, a program called Civil Society 2.0, which anybody can look up. That's a program Hillary Clinton sponsored. That created.
I didn't know she sponsored that.
Yeah, she's the one who's doing all the speeches about it. And that created the Arab Spring and then Ukraine, because it was the U.S. using the U.S. and Soros, literally his organizations, create civil society groups, creating sort of fake grassroots.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. Well, we just started to talk about it over the last 2 to 3 years about, and it's crazy because I was trying my hardest to not assume the Arab Spring was propaganda. The more I learned about it, I was like, okay, so this one seems legitimate. And then they were like, because it's what same thing. So same thing that would happen with Bernie, right? Grassroots made it a huge splash. That was organic. Yeah. But a lot of what happened next, like Antifa, like I hated when people were defending Antifa like they were somehow part of the left. I'm like, don't group them with us. They're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, no. Where the fuck was Antifa in Ferguson? Where were they in Baltimore? Where were they at when this person got shot? Where were they at when this person got shot? Because like they just came up out of nowhere, and it is a bunch of white people that were mad at Trump, and that was it.
Well, where was I? I was somewhere. It was at it was Occupy. There was an Occupy camp that was almost all black. It was Occupy Newark. And it was the people who left New York, Occupy Zuccotti Park, because it was too racist. And I talked to people, I interviewed people at Occupy, and they were like, I've heard the N-word thrown around more by white people here than I've ever heard in my life ever. And they took off to Newark. And what they told me about they said these white kids will come in and they got the ninja suits on, it was Black Bloc, Antifa, whatever you want to call them. And they'd be like, I'm talking to a black person at this point who's part of Occupy Newark. And they'd say, yeah, these white kids would come in and they have the ninja suits and everything. They'd be like, let's go break some windows. And they'd be like, no, you go break some windows. I'm black.
Yeah, seriously, I've heard that too.
If you break the windows, your parents will drive in and bail you out.
That's the best way I could think. That's why I was like, and that's probably a large reason why, because like I said, black people enjoying Antifa for what? Like, because the moment you got to put a mask on your face, black people are out. We out. Because we don't get shot. It don't take much to see through the mask to see if it's a black person. And no matter. And then what if a city in that situation killed a black man who's wearing a mask, who's destroying someone else's property, who is using items as weapons? Guess what? All of a sudden they become perfectly justified in doing so. So like, it's crazy to me, like where people who defend Antifa, because I know when something is organic, and I also know there's this phrase, right? We say it in the hip hop community: if you wasn't with me shooting in the gym. It was a reference to when Kobe's wife was about to take like $200-300 million from him, even though she never shot a basketball ever in her life. No matter what happened between them, that's his money. So like, it's the same thing. Like, where were you? You weren't there in Ferguson, which wasn't that long ago, right? You weren't there in when Stephon Clark got killed. They weren't out there protesting and going crazy. There's situation after situation after situation where they're supposedly anti-fascist and standing up to corrupt authority. These were clear opportunities for you to do that, and you were nowhere to be found. But we have a chance to go riot because Trump got in office, and the left will celebrate us.
Black Friday in Chicago, the biggest Black Lives Matter protest I ever went to, and I went to a fair amount. Biggest one. There was no Antifa there. It was, and the media. But you had Jesse walking slowly down the street. All the media, a zillion cameras. Meanwhile, people are going up and down the avenue there. And the media was like, well, I'm up running, trying to get the protest, trying to get the real story. They're doing it. But no, it's amazing. Yep. And I'll tell you, don't forget, who shut down Occupy Newark? Who shut it down? Cory Booker.
Oh yeah, that sounds about right. That doesn't surprise me at all. And and don't get me wrong, because I know that there are national elements of Black Lives Matter that have also been compromised. Like the local levels are doing some great work, but like for example, Simone Sanders was supposedly a Black Lives Matter activist before she joined Bernie Sanders' campaign. The one who got recently hired by fucking Joe Biden. People like you have to be able to dichotomize between the people who are on your team, who oftentimes, for the most part, unless it's very specific situations, listen, you don't get a job at CNN working for the real Black Lives Matter because you don't fuck with CNN no more than you fuck with Fox News.
Yeah, that's why, I saw Van Jones at CPAC, and I know a lot about Van, and I would love to. I felt bad. I said something about it because I went up and I said hi because he's blocked me, but he knows who I am. Van knows who I am, and it was it was friendly. I just said, just want to say hello. I'm Lee Stranahan. Blah blah blah. He's like, oh yeah, I know who you are, and it was fine. It was cordial, but I felt bad about it because Van's a fascinating guy to me. He's working at CNN. He was part of a storm in the Bay Area. He was part of that Bay Area leftist. I know who his mentor is, Eric Mann. I mentioned that to him, and blah blah blah. He's a guy. I would love to talk to that guy. Like I'd love to go sit down over a drink with that guy off the record.
It's very true. Yeah, I feel that way about Van too. He's kind of it's almost like it was almost too late for him, right? So he thought he was doing the right thing. He thought he was playing for the right team. Yeah, and he had this lifestyle set up for him and a family to look after,
right?
And it became too late because he calls out. I remember one of the most fascinating things he said was like at a pro Bernie activism rally, like straight. He wasn't dressed up. He was in like some jeans, and he said, "I watched Hillary Clinton burn through $1 billion like that," and like he was calling her out. Oh, I'm like, why the fuck weren't you doing this on CNN throughout the last 2 years?
But see, I get it. It's the same with. I'll tell you who else I know a little bit. I don't know Van, but I mean I know about him because I've studied him. I get his background. I'd love to have a drink with that guy. Just say off the record. Okay, here's what I think you did. I think you had a family support. I think you saw it, and I think in your head you're at CNN going, well, I'm like the best one at CNN. And do you know who else is like that? Tucker Carlson. Over at Fox. Fox, he's the one consistently. He's the best person at Fox, period. He will bring on actual opposing views. He was not in.
And let them talk.
What's that?
And let them talk and not guide them.
That's right. And I know him a little, we've talked a little, we've exchanged emails, we talked a little bit. He's a very nice guy. I think the way he justifies it is, okay, I'm the best person at Fox. They're paying me. They let me do my thing. He's got enough power where they don't really tell him what to do. And I don't think they really tell Van what to do either. But they both know that if they were to tell the truth, what they really think in their hearts, they'd lose that gig. And so they have to go, okay, I'm not going to say what I actually think, but I'll come as close to that line as I can. Does that make sense? Like I'll come as close to the line as I can. I'll bring somebody on, let them say it for me or whatever. And so with Van Jones, that's
like when he brought on Tulsi with Van Jones. Oh, both of them did, really. Both of them brought on Tulsi. She unofficially announced on Van Jones' show, and then was calling out the Democratic Party on Tucker Carlson's show and about the military-industrial complex as well.
And I get it. If I was in that position and those guys got to be making multi-millions a year. Right. Right. No, I'm just right. Seriously, they must be making millions. Certainly Tucker is, and I'm sure Van is too. And when I look at that and I go, I get it in a sense, because my wife would like it if I were making multi-millions of dollars a year. That'd be easier. I struggle. I struggle. I do constant fundraising because that's the only way to do it. You can't occasionally fundraise, but I have to do it because I live in one of the most expensive cities on the planet.
Yeah, DC is almost expensive as New York. It's ridiculous.
And I got kids and blah, blah, blah. And I don't live ostentatiously or anything, but I get it, and I would love to be able to. I wish those guys could just come forward and say, "Let me explain the game to everyone. Here's what's happening. I have to make compromises to make that money, and I'm probably the best one. I'm probably the most sincere of all the people."
It was like Ed Schultz.
Yes.
I feel like Ed is one of those very, very simple people, right? He's not building up a whole lifestyle, even close to beyond his means. So it gave him the freedom to give MSNBC the middle finger at one point, Fox News the middle finger at one point, and then he could go to RT. But like, there's no guarantee, in Tucker's mind. He damn sure won't make as much money, right? At RT. He'll make money nowhere near as much money. No. Van Jones, same thing. And I think that there is a level, especially for Van. I don't know what Tucker's background is. He seemed like a little bit more of a frat boy kind of background. But Van Jones, I know for a fact, he is his family's generational lifeline right now. And that is a very hard role to navigate in his situation where the entire world is coming awake at once when he's already been put in a role that he didn't necessarily ask for.
Well, Tucker, I mentioned I work at Access Hollywood. The way I knew Tucker originally is he went to prep school with Billy Bush and Willie Geist, who's the NBC Today Show co-host now. Okay. MSNBC. I forget where Willie is now. But I used to see Billy Bush every day because I worked with him. And then he and I would talk politics. He supported Obama in 2008, by the way. And Billy Bush, and then I knew Willie Geist because I was writing for HuffPost at the time. And then I knew Tucker. And so I would hear stories about them at prep school and stuff like that. Tucker, by the way, is a deadhead who liked to get high in prep school.
He was a liberal, like super liberal at one point.
He's not like
he's not as right as he pretends to be sometimes.
No, he's pretty sincere. He's like Andrew. He grew up in California. Andrew Breitbart grew up in California. Andrew used to say to me, he's like, I don't hate the counterculture. I like the counterculture. He said, I just don't want him to run things. He's like, but I like if you grow up in California, you're used to a certain level of hippie dippiness, which you like. You know what I mean? Which
doesn't mean I need to be a senator.
That's right. I mean,
I get
Tucker,
it.
In his book, Ship of Fools, which is a Grateful Dead song, by the way, he talks about how they used to make like those God's Eye, like his elementary school teacher was a well-meaning, liberal, and they would talk about stuff and make, do crafts projects and everything. And he said it was great. He said it was fine. And Andrew was the same way. In fact, one of the last things was right before he died, Tucker had won on eBay a dinner with Bill Ayers. He'd auctioned a dinner with Bill Ayers? Dorn. And Tucker won it. And he took Andrew Breitbart with him. And Andrew told me right before he died, he said, I really admired Tucker so much. He said, he didn't have to bring me. I'm his competition. He's got the collar. I've got the Breitbart. He just thought I would be the most fun to go with. And he was. And so after Andrew, this is like a week before Andrew died. So after he died, I got in touch with Tucker and I said, just so you know, Andrew admired you so much for bringing him because you thought it would be fun, not because you brought your co-editor or whatever who, you know what I'm saying, from a business perspective.
We need more of that, man.
We need
more of that across the board.
Yeah.
But so I'm gonna let you go. Cause I'm sure you got work to do and I got work to do as well, man. It was a fascinating conversation. Loved every minute of it. Let everybody know where they can find your stuff at.
Stranahan on Twitter is sort of the central hub, and then I got Citizen Journalism School and these other things that I do. But Stranahan.com is the best way, and I put up a lot of periscopes there. And have you seen any of the long form? Sometimes it's me talking, but I also like showing old videos that I found that expose the CIA and stuff like that. Crazy. I just put one up from like 1975 or something, an ABC special. Think about this, Niko. An ABC did an hour special on the CIA and mind control, exposing how the CIA had done drug experiments on people against their will, American citizens.
Mm-hmm. One of the reasons they started pushing hard against psychedelic drugs.
Where would they ever do that? Where would they ever do? We're going to do an hour special on how bad the CIA is. It would never happen. So So we run stuff like that up there, which people can watch as well, where it's just like these, I put up these long videos where you just go like, why didn't I know any of this stuff?
You know, it's like, okay, I thought this was like super far-fetched, but it turns out that it was only not far-fetched. It was like a real thing. Like it was a real thing. And it should have been common sense when you think about it.
Skull and Bones. We do stuff about that. Skull and Bones, completely real thing. Secret society.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. And
I mean, I know about, you know about Cecil Rhodes and those cats. So
yeah.
And that was before it was really a secret society. It wasn't even secret back then because old white men with money trying to control the world was really kind of like, we know.
That's right. And so we put a lot of stuff up there at populist.tv, just interesting stuff to watch. So plus me talking.
All right, cool. So Stranahan on Twitter, populist.tv. I follow Fault Lines on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
That way you can keep up with all the stuff with Garland and Lee. And so, but other than that, man, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, keep, I feel like our role and Garland included as well as a lot of others like Jimmy Dore and a few other people. It's so important to keep our side in check and accountable. Whatever, you can, if you consider yourself a leftist or a
yeah. I can't see anymore.